All right, now we're going to find out what this is all about. Why are we factoring? We are factoring because we're going to try to solve a quadratic. Now remember, the solution to a quadratic is where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, but we don't even really know how to graph them other than by making a t-chart. Okay, if we made a t-chart, plug some values in for x, the y would be your solution. Okay, that's what you would get when you plugged it in. But that's the only way we know how to right now. So we're going to try to find a simpler way by solving a quadratic by what we call factoring. If I have a quadratic, its solution is then where the y is 0. Would you agree? Remember your ordered pair, this looks like it's maybe about 3, 0. That one's 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that 8, 0? Okay, so the y is always 0. So when we factor this out, let's go ahead and do that like we've been working on. What do you think your last two terms are going to be? They must multiply to be 24, add together to be a negative 11. Negative 3 and negative 8. I think that sounds pretty good. Let's try it. Negative 3, x minus 8. All right, if we work it, x squared minus 8x minus 3x plus 24. Is that going to make it? Sure does. Okay, so now that we found out what it is in its factored form, how do I use that? Well, if I know that the quantity x minus 3 times the quantity x minus 8 is equal to 0, what's one of them going to have to be? What do you know when you multiply a number times something to get 0? One of them has to be a 0. Agreed? So I'm saying x minus 3 could be equal to 0, or x minus 8 could be equal to 0. So in other words, when this is 0, we're going to look and find those two values. So solve. What's x going to be if y is 0? It's going to be a 3. Remember, it's just like add 3 to both sides. Here, add 8 to both sides, and I get x equals 8. Now, didn't I say that it would be 3, 0, and 8, 0? Those are your solutions. So when you're solving for x, in your brain, you want to kind of think, okay, this is an ordered pair. This is an ordered pair that is the solution. So all that factoring we've been doing, we can now turn into it's a solution to a quadratic, as long as you're stating it as two binomials. All right, so let's take a look at this example. Now you notice, is it set equal to 0? It is not. So let's do so. We'll have x squared minus 6x. What do I do to move the 27 over? Subtract 27. Good job. Will be equal to 0. Okay, now I'm ready to do my factoring. Anything I can factor out to start with? No. Okay, so it's going to be an x and an x. What will I multiply together to get a negative 27? Add together to get negative 6. Negative 9 and a positive 3. Let's try it. X squared plus 3x minus 9x from your inner terms minus 27. Is that going to work? Yes, it would. Okay, so then to solve it, I'm going to say x minus 9 is equal to 0, and x plus 3 is equal to 0. And x could be equal 9, or x is equal to a negative 3. So your solutions would be 9, 0, and negative 3, 0. So, you know, if you had a grid, you know it's going to be negative 3, 0 over here, and 9, 0 clear down there, and it's going to go. And we know it's going to open upward, right? Because this is a positive leading coefficient. Any questions on solving by factoring? Okay, let's take a look at something that's a little unusual. I don't have it set equal to 0, so let's get the 16 on the same side. But how do I factor that? Do you remember from the perfect squares what you did? It'd be x. So remember, you don't have any x term in the middle, so they end up canceling out. So one's going to be a minus 4 and a plus 4, because that's x squared minus 4x plus 4x minus 16. Does that work? Yes. So then x is going to be equal to either 4 or negative 4. And you have just solved then that quadratic. And you've done so by factoring. All right, what do I need to move over first on this one? The negative 18d. So I have d squared. When I move it over, what's it become? Positive 18d plus 56. And remember, you're just setting it equal to 0 now. And what will your terms be? Okay, d and d for the first terms. Multiply something together to get 56. What kind of 7 and 8? Okay, now they're going to add together to get 18 d's? No. Try dividing it by 4 or 3. What works? All right, so you try dividing by 4, so you got 14 and 4. Will that work? It sure will, because I get 4 d's, and 14 d's gives you 18 d's. 4 times 14 is 56. So your solution would be d is a negative 4 or d is a negative 14. Because remember, you set them each equal to 0. D plus 4 equals 0, or d plus 14 equals 0. Solve, and I get d is equal to negative 4. Or here, d is equal to negative 14. Okay, so those are your two solutions. Any questions on solve a quadratic by factoring?